Hey everyone, I wanted to come on and share a couple things with you today because I had a great conversation with someone yesterday and I thought you guys could benefit from this as well. But first, I just want to welcome all the new people we have in the group. We have been growing and getting new members as we have changed the focus a little bit in this group. And so now, as we are looking to help you figure out, hi Marie, how you can get inspired to resign, right? How can you get inspired to go from employee to entrepreneur? Hey, Rebecca, thank you guys for joining in. As I know, this was totally unscheduled, so you had no time to get notice that I was coming on live. So I'm glad you joined me here. But I was having this conversation yesterday with someone who a friend of a friend referred him to me and said, I know Tammy, she started a business a few years ago, and this was someone who was just trying to get his business started. He had just gone through his coaching certification and he was trying to get out there and he wanted to know, how I did it, what I had learned, and all of these different things. And we were having this great conversation. And at the end, he said, I want to know, looking back, with what you know today, what would you have done differently? What was getting in your way? What could you have done to grow faster? Those type of questions that he was asking. And it's such a great question, right? Because we should all be learning from each other. We should all be learning, how do we do things better? How do we grow faster? And how do we get to where we want to be without some of the obstacles getting in our way that get in the way when you're going from employee to entrepreneur? Because there are a lot of them, and we're just going to talk about a couple today. But one of the things that he said, when he asked me that, the first thing, there was two things that came to my mind. And he asked me for one. So I shared one with him, and then later he said something else, and I'll tell you what I shared with him as well. I said, one of the things, the biggest things was just getting out of my own way, right? How many times do we get in our own way? We think we've got a better idea than of what we want to do. We're afraid to go do a Facebook Live. We're afraid to go put our posts out there. We're afraid to call our friends and tell them what we're doing because we think that we might sound salesy or that we're just promoting what we're doing. We get in our own way because we don't want to go ask people for referrals. We get in our own way because we're just stuck in not knowing what to do and not going and finding the right help to do it. And there are so many ways we get in our own way. And some of it's a mindset piece. I can't even begin to tell you how many mindset pieces there are. And Maria's like, heck yeah. It's so true. Our biggest obstacle sometimes is ourselves and just getting in our own way. And so how do you get out of your own way, right? How do you start to take the steps and make the progress? One is you've got to just start. You've got to take a step. You've got to actually get out and do the things you're afraid of doing. Because once you do them once, they're not quite as scary. And then you do them again and you're like, oh, okay, I can do this. And then you do it a third time and you're like, hey, I'm an expert now, right? You're all pumped up because now you've done it a few times and you're like, okay, why was I waiting a year to go do these things? Why was I waiting weeks to call someone that's been on my mind? And when you do finally call them, they're like, oh my goodness, I'm so glad you called because I need this and I know you can help me with that. We get in our own way with so many things. And I know for me, when I first left corporate, I was actually kind of burnt out a little bit on all the phone calls. And I was like, I really don't want to be on another call if I don't have to, because I used to be on calls for, I would get on calls for 10 hours a day. And so then I was like, I don't want to have to be on phone calls for a while. Hey, Miranda, thanks for joining us. We're just talking about the things that got in our way, how we get in our own way. And so when I first started my business, I'm like, I wanted a break. I wanted to not have someone else control my schedule. And all of a sudden I was like, why am I not getting leads? Why not getting clients? Why am I not calling people? Oh damn, I don't want someone on my schedule because that means I have to commit to getting on a phone call. And I was so tired of getting on phone calls. I had to get out of my own way. How are you ever going to get clients if you don't get on a freaking phone call? And so there's all these ways and all these things we do to ourselves that we get in our own way. So that's my first piece of advice. Get out of your own way. So I just want you to type in the comments, whether you're listening to this live or you're watching this on the replay, in what way are you getting in your own way? In what way today are you stopping yourself from doing something that you want to do? You want to get these results, but for some reason, you're afraid to take a step, or there's just this mindset piece that you're just like, I don't know if I can do this. Or you really don't actually have the tool you need to do that. And so you're getting in your own way because you're not going out and figuring out what that tool is to help you get there. You don't have the right input or the right advice. So what are those things for you guys today? Tell me what they are, because I want to know. We've all been there, so there is absolutely no judgment here. We all have things get in our way. And so I want to hear from you guys. What is getting in your way today? How can we help support each other to get out of our own way? What do you need a little push on that I can help you with? Whatever it is, I want to know. So type it in the comments in the chat. And then the other thing that I said to him at the end, he had set up this webinar that was going to be happening next week, and I had seen it come up on LinkedIn because he had just connected with me, and so I saw his post come up, and I'm going and reading it, and my first thought was like, it was really professionally well done, nice graphics, all that looked good, but as I was reading, I was like, that's kind of interesting. But who's going to come to a webinar that's like, kind of interesting, right? Like, it needs to be intriguing. It needs to be, compelling, and you need to draw them in. And so I see you, Maria. You don't like phone calls. I hear you. It was one of my biggest setbacks as well when I first started out. I'm like, I don't want to call people directly. And how many times I told myself that I wasn't a salesperson and that I couldn't be a salesperson. And I had to get past all of that because I'm not selling, I'm servicing. And you don't know how many times I have called people now and they're like, oh my goodness, I am so glad you called me. And after you get a few of those, you're like, oh, why am I resisting calling these people? They're like, thank you so much for checking in because I really needed to hear this piece of advice that you just gave me today. Or I just needed some encouragement today. And your phone call was that connection that I needed. So sometimes us getting in our own way and resisting those phone calls is actually hurting our clients, hurting the people that we could be helping, hurting the people that we want to serve the most, because they're out there waiting for a light to shine. They're waiting for somebody to say, hey, why aren't you taking that next step? And sometimes that's you. So Maria, I want you to go out and make your phone calls today and then go tell me how it went. Big gulp there, I see that. But so as going back to his message in his webinar, I said to him, I'm like, can I give you some honest feedback? And he said, yes, please do. I said, okay. I said, I looked at your message and I thought, it's interesting. Like there was questions that came up in my mind. I'm like, I think this is who he's trying to draw to this, but I'm not quite sure. And I think this is the message he's trying to get across, but it wasn't really clear. And so I said, who are you trying to meet? Who are you trying to bring to this? And in this specific example, he was like, I want to get people who have either lost their jobs or been furloughed. I want to get them into a conversation and talk about what's happening. I really want to serve them in this way and see if we can come up with some solutions together and really mastermind around this. And so he was really trying to serve. But in his messaging, it came across as a little bit more about him. It's like, I've been through this, blah, blah, blah. And nobody cares about your own story. They really don't. They care that you understand what they're going through, but it needs to be about them. And so I gave him some quick tips. I'm like, listen, just go in, do a new post. He's like, I'm not getting any traction on this webinar. People are liking it, but there's nobody signed up. I'm like, you need to change your message. You need to change what you're doing. And so I shared with him some things he needed to post. I'm like, if you want to talk to people who have been let go and furloughed, you need to say that. That wasn't anywhere in the message. You need to start out with that and really draw to what they're going through, what their needs are, what the pain is that they're having to get them into this conversation so that you can help and serve them. And so at the end, he's like, I really appreciate that. I really appreciate the honest feedback because, I talk to so many different people who are like, oh, that's nice. And yeah, that looks nice. This is good. I like it. And he's like, nobody ever tells me like the hard, honest truth. And I told him, I said, when you asked me what I had learned, there were two things that came up in my mind. And one was that I was getting my own way. And the other one was that you need to hire a coach that is going to be honest with you, that is going to tell you the hard truth because they want to see you grow. They want to see you progress. They want to see you stand out and get the results that you really want. And when you're working with coaches who are just like, oh, yeah, that looks good. That looks nice. That's professional. And you're not getting the push that you need to actually get the results that you want, it is the hardest thing. I can't tell you. I mean, when I started out, and I don't mean to like bash any coaches because that's not the intent. I mean, there are so many good coaches and there are so many people who do different things. But let me share with you what I mean. I was working with a coach when I first started out, when I went through my certification, and she was an amazing transformational coach. So amazing at transformation. I mean, she could coach somebody on what they were going through, see things that nobody else could see, and just guide them through that process of getting there. But she also called herself a business coach. And her business advice wasn't all that great at times. It wasn't specifically for startups, and most of her people were startups. And so she was giving tactics and advice of things that she was doing that were at a much higher level that don't work for startup companies. And she gave me some advice about a niche that I should go into. And so I spent like 6 months, really working on building out some funnels and some freebies and all these things to try to work on that niche. And about 6 months into it, I was just starting to release some of the stuff I was doing because, you spend all this time behind the scenes working on things, which is another thing you need to learn. We need to get out in front first, right? So if you're hiding behind the scenes and working on the computer stuff and not going and talking to people, you are really doing a disservice to yourself. And that's getting in your own way. That's a way of avoiding having to do those phone calls, having to do the Facebook Lives, having to get out there in front of people. So it's just another way of getting in our own way. And so as I was going through this process and about to make a shift in what I was helping people with, I met another coach. And she proved to me in a room with several other people why I couldn't go into this niche, why it would not work. And it had nothing to do with me. It had to do with the audience. It had to do with what the people wanted. It had to do with the pain they were going through. It wasn't something that they didn't need, but they weren't going to pay for it. It wasn't something they wanted at that point in their business. And so I had a huge shift when somebody was finally honest with me and was finally like, this is really what you need to be doing. This is where you need to be heading. This is what you need to be working with people on. And since then, since I've gotten this clarity around some of the things and not just listening to what other people are telling me, but actually getting some of the hard truth fed back to me, asking for real advice on something instead of being worried about what somebody's going to say and just looking for people around me that are just going to be like, yeah, you're doing a good job and just pat you on the back, when really they need to be kicking you in the butt to get your ass out there. So that is where we need to make some shifts. We need to be surrounding ourselves with people who are willing to tell us the truth, to tell us what really is good and what really needs to be tweaked, and not in a hurtful way, but in a way that is going to help you, in a way that is going to push you to that next level that you say you want to get to. And I know you want to get there, but you're resisting it. And part of your resistance is surrounding yourself with people who are just nice and who are just, they may be trying to be supportive, but they may not even know what to tell you, right? So it's about surrounding yourself with the right people who are going through this, who have been through it, who can acknowledge what you have done, but also say, hey, but if you tweak this, you're going to get better results. So it was my message for you today. And I hope this was helpful because I think we all need to learn these lessons from each other, right? I mean, we are all here supporting each other. We all want to be inspired to do the things we want to do. And it is my goal for you that you get inspired to be able to make the changes you want, to be able to get the results that you want, to be able to, if it is to leave your job, then be able to leave the job that you don't want to be in and start a business, or if it's to change careers, whatever it is for you. And it's not the same for everybody. And I know this group, we've kind of, moved a little bit more into employee to entrepreneur, but we're here to support whatever the change is for you. You need to resign from something, right? There is something in your life that is not serving you, and you need to resign from it. And you need to move into something that is more inspiring, more, something that you're just like have been saying forever, I want to do this, but I can't. And some of the same things get in our way. We get in our own way. We're getting in our own way way too often in so many different ways. And we're not talking to the right people. We're surrounding ourselves with people who are just, I love them, they're supportive, but they aren't pushing us like we need to be pushed sometimes. And that's where, when I look back and say, if I were to make some changes, what would I have done sooner as I was making this transition? Those are two big things. So I hope this message finds you well. I hope you get inspired to do whatever in life you want to do so that you can be the change and help others be their change. I see you all next time. I'm so glad you all joined me. I love ya. See ya.